If you're a diver, you know the pain of having way too much gear. I mean, really, can you ever have too much gear? Hey, jokes aside, we all know that pain of just accumulating a lot of stuff. And as we accumulate all this different gear, storage solutions become an absolute must. Well, if you're anything like me, you've tried these storage tubs, you've tried just hanging stuff in a closet or in the garage, and really just nothing seemed to be perfect or the right fit for what you actually needed for your gear storage. Well, in this video, I'll share my new solution that I think is one of the most efficient, cost-effective, and cleanest ways to store your scuba gear. Let's get into it. Now, just like you, I've tried a lot of different solutions to store my dive gear before, but they all just seem to have problems. First, I tried just standard storage totes to store all my gear in. Now, these are fine for some things for sure, but you really have to be careful with how you store your gear in there if you're putting everything in there, because things like a BCD bladder, for example, or even wetsuits and dry suits can get creases in them and actually cause damage to the material itself if you're kind of folding them over and then keeping like heavier weight on top of it there. It can actually break down the neoprene for wetsuits and make them a little bit thinner in those areas, or just not as flexible and not going to be as warm for you. It can wear that material out. And then for the BCDs, it can cause like a crease in the BCD bladder, which we don't want that in there either. There's also a worry about how much weight is in there in general, because you could have things that are a little bit more sensitive, like say a regulator that's in the storage bin. And as you're storing that storage bin, depending on where it is, it might get knocked around a bit. And having sensitive items, again, like a regulator in there, dive computers, etc., may not be the safest option for them. There's also a problem with weighted items in general, like say a dive torch or flashlight, whatever you want to call it. When that drops down to the very bottom of your bin and you're trying to fish through everything to find that one dive torch that slipped all the way down there, it's just not the most fun solution. So it's not really a one size fits all, though I think it does work okay. Now, I've also tried using garment racks before. So just like clothing racks like you would see in a store, for example. And that actually worked really well for all of my gear that hung. But unfortunately, that's the problem, is it only really works for gear that can be hung up on a hanger. And hanging up everything all the time isn't always the best option for me. And it also just takes up a lot of space in the garage. I mean, it's so spread out. I had 2 separate garment racks that were all hanging up all the different wetsuits and the dry suit and all the BCDs that I have and all of that stuff. And it's just a little bit too much space. So maybe great for drying, but not really a longer term storage solution. So with this problem, I started looking up different solutions online and tried to find things on Scuba Board and stuff. And most of it were just like these DIY solutions that just weren't really practical for my application. And I knew I'd have to kind of find my own custom solution, like a DIY project, or maybe just deal with these garment racks that are just taking up loads and loads of room. I really wanted to combine the two and find kind of a solution that could work to where I'd have like the organization capacity of bins that, could actually have hard items that are out on a shelf type thing that could be stored in, a little basket or something like that, but then also have the ability to hang things up so they're not getting creased as they would in a storage bin. But I needed it to be a lot more condensed in size and just take up way less space, and also preferably a little bit cost effective, and I wasn't going to break the bank trying to build a scuba storage solution out there. Now, with this problem in mind, I decided to go to my local dive shop that I work at, Carolina Dive Center, to see how dive shops store their gear. I mean, they have plenty of gear to store, and sometimes it's not always the biggest square footage in the retail space, so how are they storing all that gear? Now, like I said, I teach out of the store, but I never really paid attention to the retail setup too much in terms of like storage solutions or how things are presented. And I gotta say, after taking a look, it finally hit me that I could use the equivalent of retail sales displays in my garage to actually store plenty of gear for myself, both what I have now as well as allow for expansion, and it won't take up that much space or break the budget. Yes, this meant that I wanted to build a retail wall display that would allow me to not just hang up wetsuits and BCDs, but also have different shelves so I can display things and store things like my mask, my snorkel, my slates for teaching, my reels, my gloves, my hoods, all these different things that need to be organized in a nice, neat fashion. Now, this shop actually uses 2 different display options. They have what's called grid wall, which is kind of like a grid square rack that gets mounted onto the wall. You can put different hooks and things like that in there. But what I decided to go with is their other solution, which is called slat wall. Now, slat wall displays are made out of a variety of different materials. They have some that are made out of wood and metal and things like that. But what I went with was a little bit of a cheaper option, a lighter option, and something that would work for me. And that was actually out of PVC. Now, one of the best things about either of these solutions, but especially with slat wall, is that the panels themselves are actually modular. So you can add on additional panels and make it wider or skinnier, taller or shorter, build down, build up, build to the sides, whatever you need to do. Then within each of these walls, there's these different little tracks in there, or slats, that's why it's called slat wall, and that actually lets you get a whole slew of accessory options. They can be hooks from really short hooks to really long hooks, and all the sizes in between. You can get waterfall hangers to hang things up like clothing or BCDs and things like that. You can just get straight regular hangers for that as well. Of course, you can get hat hangers, so you can get hat hooks, you can get shelves and baskets and angled shelves and all these different things that I had no idea existed, but that's all part of the like retail display world. Now, because it's completely modular, it allows you to customize your exact storage solution for you. So, I mean, if you have a nice big wall that you can mount multiple of these things and have a nice wide display, great. If you really just have kind of a small footprint area, no problem. Use that small little area instead, and maybe you can build up instead if need be. But the point is that you can get the exact hooks and shelves, baskets, and all of that stuff that you need for your gear specifically, and it's all customizable and just kind of plug and play. Hook in a hook, take it back off if you don't need it anymore. It's no big deal. Now, the absolute best part for me specifically is that this all mounts on a single wall. So now all of my gear is up against the wall. It's not spread out across two different garment racks and different shelving units and things like that. It's not like having storage bins that are just totes and totes and totes full of different gear that are just spread out all over the place, or again, on some type of storage rack solution that I have to pull down individually and put back up. All of my gear is out on display, so it's easy to see what I need and grab and go. I can have different bins set up for different purposes, and it's all organized, neat, and out of the way, which is the best part. Up against that wall, small footprint. Now, you can get slat wall and equivalent types of things at Home Depot, Lowe's, and other big box stores like that, but I actually found it was cheaper to go to Amazon, surprisingly. They actually had a version of slat wall that was quite a bit cheaper than what I found in stores, and I actually left links down below for you if you're interested in picking those up instead, but of course, feel free to go to a local store if you want to see it in person. That link down below is the one that I use personally for my wall in the garage, so I can attest to it, but I did see a lot of other manufacturers and brands that offer slat wall as well, so your mileage may vary if you buy a different brand, but I can definitely attest to the one that I picked up at least. Now, for me personally, I went with a set that was 4 feet tall and 8 feet wide because that fit perfectly into the wall space that I was comfortable occupying within my garage. But again, these are modular, so you can buy different panels and kind of expand and add on or build up higher, or have one part that goes up maybe 8 feet and then on like a 1 foot, 4 foot section, and then maybe the next 4 foot section is just 4 feet tall, 4 feet by 4 feet, right? Like, you can really build these out however you need to, which is really cool. Now, unfortunately, I had a little issue with actually trying to film the build itself. I was really excited about it and thought I hit record, and apparently I didn't. So I didn't get a time lapse of the build itself, but I can show you the after of what it looks like now, and I'm still organizing a few things, but I'm pretty happy with where it is. Now, just to cover our bases, don't worry about the installation. It's actually very, very simple. You might need a second set of hands just to hold it up against the wall for you, make sure it's level and measured out in the right areas and all that fun stuff like you would normally when hanging something on the wall. But then you actually just put in some screws right into your drywall. So preferably into studs, but you can use drywall anchors if need be. And you just basically hold the panel up, drill it in, and it just goes right into the PVC, right into the stud behind the panel. Knock that out in a few different areas on the panel, and it is strong, sturdy, and ready to go, holding all the weight that you need. I don't know what the max load capacity is. I'm sure that it says somewhere on the Amazon listing that I bought, but I can tell you that I've put up 5 or 6 BCDs, I've put up a dry suit, number of wetsuits, plus a bunch of shelves with gear on it, and I haven't had any issues or any worry in any way, shape, or form that those panels are going to drop. Now, I will say as a little caveat, if you do buy the set that I linked down below, I did actually go to Lowe's and buy a few extra screws just to make sure that I had a little extra security. I just wanted to put a few more into the studs. I think that they give you like the minimum amount recommended in the instructions, and I decided to double that basically and buy like another 20. So I think they give you 20 and I put 40 in total. But screws are very cheap if you haven't bought hardware before, at least here in the US they are. So it's pretty cheap to just buy a bulk pack of screws and just, re-secure your wall. You're gonna have a lot of gear on there. It's worth putting a few extra in there just to make sure it can hold all the weight that you want. Now, once I had the slat wall all assembled and up on the wall, it was time to go and get some actual accessory hooks and baskets and things like that. Now, this is all going to depend on what you want specifically, but know that they have different shelves that are, different size lengths. You can actually measure that out and kind of plan out in your head where you want it to be on the wall. They also come in different depths as well. And then for baskets, there's the depth, the width, and then the height of the basket too, or I guess like the depth of the basket, the width and the length maybe would be a better way to say that. And then of course, like there's hooks and stuff too. And like I said, the hooks can come in different lengths as well. So there's a lot of different accessories out there. And again, just kind of plan for it and what gear you want to hang up. And what I would recommend is actually starting with less and then buying additional things as you start to place things on the wall and see how much space you truly have as you start hanging stuff up, because you might find that you crammed a little bit too much in there. Now, I left links down below to a bunch of different examples of accessories out there, but if you just search like slat wall hooks or slat wall baskets or just slat wall in general, you'll find a bunch of accessories on Amazon as well. So again, you can start by clicking some of the links down there and then just kind of look around as need be for your exact measurements that you want. And the other pro tip that I'll tell you is remember that when you place like a shelf on something and then there's another shelf below it, you need to have space in between there to actually place items on the shelf. Silly, and I don't know why I did this necessarily, but initially I actually had things crammed a little bit too tightly together. And like I had some baskets, for example, underneath a shelf, and to access the basket, you need to still reach underneath that shelf. So I have to, you got to give yourself enough space to be able to see things, I guess. You don't want it all crammed too tightly together. The other thing that I'll say is that there's a thing called waterfall hooks, and these are basically what I have for my wetsuits and BCDs hanging up here instead. And those waterfall hooks, I'll show you a little bit of a close-up of here. That allows you to kind of stagger the placement of your wetsuits and stuff and be able to see them in a tiered look rather than just have them in a straight line. So I like that for the aesthetic piece of it, but obviously it's not needed. You can just get a straight bar and hang all your hangers on there instead. Now, the best part about all of this is, for me, the slat wall is obviously the biggest purchase of this, but then after that, all these little accessory hooks and stuff really aren't that expensive. And everything that I'm about to show you for the final product was actually under $500. So it's crazy. The slat wall plus all the accessories for the different shelves and baskets, all of that for under $500 for what I think is the perfect storage solution for me. So with that, let's take a look at the final product. But wait, before I reveal that, if you're enjoying this type of video, share it with one of your dive buddies so they can see some other dive storage solutions as well, and consider being a channel member. You can hit the join button down below and you'll get early access to videos like this one. This is my brand new storage solution in the garage. Now, I do have a little extra storage on this rack I'll talk about in just a moment here, and a few bits and bobs over on my workbench, but this is where I keep all of my gear at this point in a nice compact area in the back of the garage here. So let me just go ahead and walk through everything. I'll go ahead and start in the top right here and we'll go from there. So taking a look first, we have my regulator bags there. So reg bags, of course, just from Apex. Got my side mount kit, my primary reg. I also have one that I take into the pool some and things like that too, that I actually have in the shop at the moment getting worked on. I've got masks, snorkels, extra regulator for the double hose regulator that I'll be restoring, reel cutting devices, slates, things like that, torches, storage bags, gear bags, extra tanks down here, more storage bags, butt pockets, dry boxes, hot hands for my class when I teach in the wintertime. I like to allow my kids or adult students for that matter to warm up their hands. Down at the bottom, I have this nice little shoe rack area where I just have my neoprene booties, have my weight bag and weight belt down there as well. And then coming back up into these different baskets here, these baskets allow me to sort out things that I may not use very often, like my ERDP, for example, but I also have some extra weight pouches, like neck gaiters, neoprene hoodie, some extra inflator hoses, gloves over here as well for colder weather if need be, my fins that I dive with all the time, my dry suit fins. I have some more fins that I'm getting ready to list and sell online. I've got my slates for class. And then I've got all these BCD hangers here that let me store my different BCDs, whether it's for side mount, for doubles, back mount, doubles that is, my regular, recreational backplate and wing for class, jacket style for pool. Moving on to wetsuits, I've got my shorties, I've got a surf fur, I've got my bare exo that I wear, I've got my semi-dry, I've got my dry suit here as well, right? So literally these hangers, as we kind of look at these like waterfall style hangers, they have plenty of room for me to store more stuff on here if need be. And I could have all my wetsuits, BCs, and things like that, and I don't have to worry about it falling off the wall. So all of these panels store all of my gear, with the only exception really being the couple things I have on the ground, that, you know, cheap shoe rack, a couple bags that I put down there, and my tanks. And what this has done is it's allowed me to have this entire one-car garage that we're standing in kind of be reduced to just that single back wall, and all of my stuff gets contained, and it lets me actually have a home gym that I'll show you in just a second. Now, I did cheat a little bit. I do have a storage rack over here where that bin has my fiance's stuff. She doesn't get to dive as often as I do, or doesn't want to dive in a quarry usually, so that only comes out during our trips for the most part. I've got my crate, shout out to Divers Ready, my little dive crate that I take on every dive site that holds all my stuff. And then I've got these little container bins that have, like, you know, extra bolt snaps and line and tank covers and things like that. My Save a Dive kit and my O2 kit in case of any emergency. I take that out to my classes. So yes, that's a little bit extra, but for your average diver, this is more than enough space for all of your gear and then some. You can see I've got empty hooks at the top there, you know, plenty of space to expand still, which is great. And again, this has allowed me to then take this one-car garage as I back up some and turn it into a home gym, TV, you know, rack mount, everything there. Got our workouts written out here. And this one-car garage is completely open for me to use now, and the only space my scuba gear takes up is just that little bit in the back, which is really nice. Now, you might say, like, what about cleaning your gear and things like that? Working on your gear, where's your workbench at? Well, I do have a 2-car garage on this side, so I have 3 cars total at this house, luckily. And I apologize for the mess. I've been doing a lot of yard work recently, so we got wheelbarrow out and wagon and things like that. But this workbench is actually where I get to do a lot of my work on my rigs, if I'm gonna be swapping out hoses and stuff. So I do have things like an inflator hose over here, a couple extra fins that I'm gonna be selling, all of my Swift transmitters, and different tools to kind of work on things like swapping out rig kits and stuff like that. And I have some port plugs and things like that organized into this little holder here. But otherwise, you know, again, all of that is stored on that single back wall. Now, this big old bin is my wash bin, and I do have a drying rack over there as well. So when I'm washing my gear, I'm able to wheel this out, rinse it all, dunk it all in there, let it soak if need be, and then hang it up to dry. And if you're interested in a video on how I maintain all of my gear, I'll go ahead and link that in the description, in the comments below, and then at the end of this video as well. So with that said, this one storage solution over here has transformed everything for me, giving me so much space back. And it's really allowed me to keep a nice compact storage setup for happy wife, happy life type thing, but, you know, really just very practical in general, very organized, and it's similar to a shop, and I could probably get it displayed even better than it is now. So, and with that, leave any comments you have down below, stay safe, have fun, and let's go diving.